Hi, I'm Anna Ellis with a special edition for Information Friday. Today's show is dedicated to the 13 lives lost 19 years ago at Columbine High School. They were Cassie Bernal,
Steve Cornell,
Corey DePuter,
Kelly Fleming,
Matt Ketchter,
Daniel Mossor,
Daniel Rorber,
Rachel Scott,
Isaiah Scholes,
John Tomlin,
Lauren Townsend,
Kyle Velasquez,
and Coach Dave Sanders. Now, a lot has happened since Columbine. It's been almost 20 years, and with all the gun violence we see in America, has it improved since Columbine at all?
Honestly, no. With recent events in Parkland, and, in Ferguson, in Sacramento, and just it really has not changed at all. We still see our country stuck in a place where people are being put down by guns, their lives being taken away, just because a person was upset, or a person just felt like, for example, like Trayvon Martin, he was shot because he was living in the color skin he was living in,
Yeah, it's pretty tragic. And honestly, I'm just kind of overwhelmed with a lot of emotion. It's kind of difficult to fathom it, and I'll probably cry later today. But basically, I looked at some statistics, and I found that per year, 70,000 people are wounded and 30,000 people are killed from gun violence, which is absolutely, I think it should be zero.
Exactly. It's a struggle to deal with, numbers, but one thing that we have to think about is also the names of the people.
Yeah, every single number was a person.
Exactly.
Who was part of a community and was very meaningful to the people around them, and then all of a sudden they're just gone. Their lives were taken away.
Right, and add on to that, mainly also families and mothers, how we talked a little bit about this earlier, about how mothers think about what was the last thing, their child said before they were gunned down by someone's emotions.
Yeah, I gotta say, I have a couple things I want to bring up. First is I watched a video of a mother who lost her daughter in Sandy Hook, and she was she kind of mentioned that she's not typical in Connecticut because her family is of color, and basically how her daughter's death would have been handled differently had she lived somewhere else in the world,
right,
outside of Connecticut,
And to add on to that, and you might name specific places like Connecticut and Little Rock, Colorado, but it's everywhere. It's and it's we focus more on the U.S. because this is where we live. This is what some people may call home, but this is all around the world where people are being put down by this machinery that's it's so easy, and I think that's a big problem with people nowadays. We're always trying to go the easy route, the easy way with technology. I'll ask Google, to schedule this, or what's today or what's the weather, just because it's easier, it's tangible, and it's a problem. And to relate that back to guns and using it as a way to hurt people, and I think that's one thing people don't really realize. And at their psychological mind state, they're just I don't care, I just have to get this done, or this is why, this is my reason. But it's it's a robe, or a layer of just emotion and pain that comes after this one event.
Yeah. And the United States actually has a lot more school shootings than Germany, Indonesia, Romania, Iceland, and the United Kingdom combined, which is pretty scary, and how guns are kind of ingrained in our culture through the NRA with their gun lobby, and the NRA is controlled by the gun companies, so that's pretty insane. How they're kind of, sacrificing people's lives for profit.
And that's one thing that I honestly struggle with nowadays is it's money is only hyped up because we hype it up so
Yeah.
much. Like, money is this regular paper that people, it's what it's worth. But is it worth billions and trillions and thousands of dollars for this one life? That, and it's not even one. As I believe you said earlier, it was about 30,000 a year.
Exactly.
A year.
And let me just mention that it is possible to overcome the gun lobby. Australia actually did it. I saw a Daily Show video about it, where John Oliver interviewed some people down there, and basically in the past there was like a really bad problem with like guns in Australia, and like there were people who were being paid, politicians who were paid by the gun lobby to divert the conversation. And what I think what a lot of people in Australia did to pass gun legislation was they sacrificed their political careers to make sure that legislation could be passed to control firearms. Yeah, and I feel like, is our government doing its job right now?
Our governments, our government it's wild. I would say it's they keep trying to do, oh, I'm sorry, I feel bad
thoughts
for the
and
family.
Prayers.
Exactly, thoughts and prayers. Thoughts and prayers is not going to keep me alive.
Yeah.
And as a black African American male, I have to worry about every day when I walk out of my house, am I going to be shot? Am I going to be pinned down to the ground, telling somebody that I can't breathe? It's really hard. And that's one thing, and people, I don't wake up every day to look for racism, but it's embedded. It's like sewn into.
It's impossible to escape.
Exactly. It's embedded in our government, and it's embedded in people's minds. And it's a struggle, and it's so hard to come back and try to move ahead and move towards things when we have even dealt with certain issues. Like, you know what I mean? And I know, like, nowadays, for example, a organization named Barrier Student Activists went to the Capitol building yesterday to talk with legislators, with government, to propose bills that, students, actual children and teens are backing up, to protect their safety. And as great as that sounds, and, as teens being very activated, but it's like we still have to deal with, like, things like police brutality.
Exactly.
No,
and, like, I do believe, especially in Sacramento, kind of like, since it was kind of close to us, it kind of brings up the fact that a lot of police officers who are stationed in communities of color aren't aware of their implicit biases, which can really be, like, a major problem. Because, actually, my psychology class, we talked about ingrained racial biases in our heads, and they did this test where, basically, it was like a kind of a weird game where you had to, you had to tell in like 10 seconds whether or not someone had a gun or if it was something else. And that's where the racial biases really came out, and we should be aware of that and, be more careful.
Right. And to add on, I want to ask you a question, actually. Do you think now with gun control bills that are trying to come out and we're trying to push for, do you think that some of those, like, limitations should happen to police?
I think, well, first of all, there's this idea in America that, like, the government doesn't control you, and there's kind of this, this attitude that, like, if the government has, like, the upper hand, then they can, like, take over, like, or some sort of, like, weird...
Even though they're still running us to this day. But
they're running us. Right. Basically, it's kind of the independent, colonizing spirit is deeply ingrained in our culture because the United States was founded on violence. It's kind of hard to... Sorry, I lost your question.
No, it's totally fine. It just, as we've been hearing a lot with these gun control bills, that they're trying to limit, certain people to get guns. But, like, as I was saying, like, should we limit someone that's supposed to provide safety, and they're not even doing that, Yeah. And I don't want to tell anybody how to do their job, but when you are interfering with yourself or anyone else or their lives, I think you're not doing your job. Yeah. Honestly.
The person I saw online that the person who called 911 to kind of report that there had been some robbery, someone had like robbed some cars in Sacramento. He regretted that 911 call because someone ended up getting shot who was completely innocent, who had a phone. He did not have a gun, and yet he was shot so many times. It's just like, how do you just go up to someone and be like, just shoot them 20 times? And like, how does that, I can't even fathom.
I know. It's like, it's a struggle. It's hard.
I get that, like, being a police officer is a very stressful job, but you should still be able to keep it in check.
Yeah, and we're just letting anyone in. It's like, we're just, if you want to be a police officer, come on, let's be a police officer. But, it's more than that. It's to serve and protect. But, like I was saying earlier, like, how are you going to make that your mission statement if I don't feel protected? If I don't feel like, you're serving me? But, and we can't, because they're not all cops are not bad. But this just goes back to time when, when the first, African slaves were brought over to America, and how, they built America on their backs, and how we keep seeing that in, in today's culture. It's hard because, none of us, or a time machine has not been built yet, so none of us can go back in time and change it. But it's like, how do we move on if we don't even start with one situation? Because honestly, I'm just seeing repeat a version and just like revise. You know what I mean? Like, how Reagan's war on drugs, and like now how that's coming up to having people be put in jail just because of the color of their skin, and then you have the 3-strike rule, and just putting people in for small stuff based off their race, and not also race but sexuality too. Say what you're gonna say.
Yeah. I have a lot to like supplement because you really went on like a tangent there.
I'm so sorry for that.
It's okay. It's completely valid, dear. It's all right. Shoot. Where do I even start? Give me a second. Hold on. Can you like repeat something you said? Just like.
I think my main point.
Right. I got it.
Okay.
Basically, like the war on drugs was launched when drug use was actually on a decline, and like. Kind of like saying like no to drugs, it's not that simple, and like it just really just like with the Reagan administration, like Nancy Reagan just say no, like not really understanding how deeply rooted like all the problems are, and how they're so much more complex than they seem. It really makes me as a white person feel like I have to delve into, like it's not that simple, and I need to examine, what people of my race have done and how to properly reconcile it and make sure it improves and doesn't happen again, because like with the school to prison pipeline, it's just a repeat.
Right. And I know we're both kind of going on rants right now, so to sort of bring it back, what do you think we can propose for change about it? Because I know I said earlier that we can't do change unless we start with the first thing, but we could do change now, as I was mentioning about, the organization of students that made their way up to make $10,000 come out of, and fund and get buses and things to get them to Sacramento and back. It's just, how do you think we can make change right now?
Well, I'd say number one, register to vote.
Yes.
Make sure you're registered to vote.
Yes.
I was lucky enough that in my government econ class, someone came in, like, got us all registered. Worked out great. I'm registered to vote. Ready to shoot it in November.
Yes.
So that's the first thing, because politicians only really listen to people who vote and exercise that power. And it's generally a lot of like middle-aged to older people who exercise that right to vote.
Right.
And us young people should really like step up our game, because, everything's changing.
Right.
Like, there's just so much to look at.
Yeah, and I want to add on to about teenagers. We're undetermined, but we are powerful.
Yeah.
And we are in a time we are living in a revolution. We are living in a time where kids and teenagers are really being accepted for the voices. Like, you know, like, how can you even imagine 19 years ago, and I don't want to, you know, speak on, because I don't want, you know, not anyone to get offended, but, you know, 19 years ago, 300 students going into the Capitol meeting, you know, proposing these bills to people that think that it's, you know, not, you know, people that are like, oh, I'm sitting sorries, but are like, it's not, you know, it's not okay.
Yeah. I actually, I do believe that there's, like, this craze in, like, the 80s. I'm not certain. I watched a New York Times retro report on the myth of super predators, kind of like teenage adolescents going, like, haywire and, like, getting, like, all violent. And, like, it's kind of, like, instilled this fear of adolescence, and it also, like, ties back to, like, the racial stuff as well, like, how people of color are more likely to be incarcerated for smaller offenses than, like, you know, white people are. So basically there's that kind of fear of adolescence right there back then. And that's one thing that people, you know, have to recognize is the time period that you're living in. And I can say that I feel that I'm living in a time period that, yes, I am, you know, scared, but I'm also powerful. I can use, and you can too, all of us can use our voices. We don't always need to get picket signs and walk out of school and miss our education, because that's also powerful as well. Yeah.
We just need our voice. We need these moments to come together. You know, it takes a village. You can't you can't do everything on your own. Yes, there are not star people, but for lack of a better word, star people that, like, stand out, like, you know, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, and all those type of people that stand out. But, you know, it's people that Martin talked to about his speeches, and, you know, his family and his wife and who he kept around him that uplifted. It's all about uplifting. Is one thing that I would say.
And I gotta say, in, like, today's day and age, like, there's so many different issues to divide us. But what I really noticed in the March for Our Lives was that it was, like, a combination of both stereotypically red states and blue states getting together around one cause. And I just hope that we can get that unity of, like, going for what's right and not just being angry at each other all the time.
Yeah, because anger is, it's a strong force. Emotions are a strong force. And you really can feel it off of another person. You can really and let it develop in you. But you have to move on. You have to make an effort. Is what I think we can end on this point with this tribute to the lives lost. Is that you have to make an effort for change.
Exactly.
So yes, we want to thank all you guys.
Thank you very much for tuning in.
Yes, please stay in tune at KOSA Radio at KOSA.org, where minds, words, music, and rhymes meet.